Hello my fellow oddities. With 16 distinct Mortal Kombat titles across the well over 30 years of history for the fighting game franchise, everyone's gonna have their favorite and least favorite. So I'm gonna give you mine, along with all the ones that come in between. Here are all the Mortal Kombat games ranked from worst to best. But first, thank you for taking the time to click on this video. If you end up enjoying it, drop a like and consider subscribing for more content just like this, coming very soon. But let's quit talking and let's get ranking. Number 16, Mortal Kombat Mythologies Sub-Zero. Woo, starting off hot straight away. Most fans only have one title in mind for worst Mortal Kombat game, and while this one is usually not too far behind on those lists, I personally think Mythologies is that bottom of the barrel. The game does have a decent story following my favorite character, the older Sub-Zero Bi-Han, also introducing his goth baddie girlfriend, but it gets bogged down by the miserable gameplay. Movement is either too fast or too slow, jumping is awkward, and there's a turn button. A turn button. The Mortal Kombat style of controls was simply not made for a 2D platformer like this, and that means I can't personally recommend it to anyone who isn't a hardcore fan. Number 15, Mortal Kombat Special Forces. This game is underrated. Cast me to the Netherrealm. I don't care. Special Forces released in a fraction of the form it was supposed to, yet I still find it a nice little waste of a few hours. Not a masterpiece, the graphics are rough, the writing is terrible, and the combat is fairly basic, but is that enough to place it among the worst games of all time as it often is? I quite frankly find that notion ridiculous. I don't want to write it off as just herd mentality, but please give MK Special Forces a try for yourself, then come back to this video and comment your thoughts. I think you'll be surprised. Number 14, Mortal Kombat 1. The most recently released entry, and I believe it's the worst mainline game in the franchise. I was 100% on board and willing to give this new era a shot, even with the massive changes that turned classic characters nearly unrecognizable. But then they went and barked up a slop multiverse storyline that diminished all my interest. Combine that with gameplay that hinges on whether you enjoy the cameo system. I do not. And the worst progression in the franchise with the impressively boring invasions mode, and you get a game I don't have much glowing praise for. I think the only thing would be the graphics. It's the most beautiful MK game, but other than that, I was let down. Number 13, Mortal Kombat 4. The first dip into the third dimension, but also the black sheep of the franchise, stuck between two eras of MK. While MK4 attempts to take the series into a new place, it feels too safe and tethered to what came before. The new villain and other couple additions to the roster were quite underwhelming. The gameplay gives you underbaked new features like sidestepping, weapon combat, and maximum damage. This is to game balancing what deodorant is to a shower. What's good about MK4 is the aesthetic. Not much of the life and color from the 2D era got lost in the transition to 3D, and a lot of the character designs are great. You also gotta mention the legendary voice acting and endings.
Wait, this is brutality! You can't do it! Wrong, Jarek. This is not a brutality. This is a fatality.
But overall, MK4 suffers from just being forgettable and not leaving a huge impact. Number 12, Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. Technically the game that both killed and saved the franchise at once. MK vs. DC is very stupid, very corny, but enjoyable for what it is. A crossover where you can go, hey, that happened. The story is actually not bad for getting these characters where they need to be without feeling forced or contrived. The gameplay is still 3D, but nothing like the 3D era combat, feeling more like the precursor to the NRS MK9 gameplay. There's also the in-fight minigames that are hokey but not terrible, and of course the big point of contention with this game, the T rating. This meant no gore in the fatalities, and the DC heroes got heroic brutalities. But with a few exceptions, they honestly aren't that bad. So MK vs. DC, I would never have huge expectations for a game like this, which is why it's a bit low, but it delivers fine enough on the promise of Mortal Kombat vs. DC Universe. Number 11, Mortal Kombat X.
What?
Mortal Kombat X is mid everywhere besides the gameplay. Am I really going to be the only person who admits that? Yes, MKX's combat is really good, and it hasn't been topped since. It is the perfect modernization of MK3's original run button and combo system, plus the variations giving plenty of new playstyles to mess around with. But this game suffers the same issue as MK4, being too safe and clingy to the past. That's seen in the roster, where characters who are actually important to the story, like Lee Mei and Serena, are left out for Reptile, Ermac, and Ferrator, who do absolutely nothing. And it's in the story, where interesting plotlines like the Outworld Civil War is overshadowed by the Special Forces and their Nepo babies, and the samey MK4 plot with Shinnok. The game also looks horrendous, by far the worst looking MK game to date. So while the gameplay is always the most important thing, which is what allows MKX to get this high, that's all anyone ever talks about with this game because the rest of it is lame. Number 10, Mortal Kombat 11. When I think of the most divisive Mortal Kombat game, no other title comes to mind before this one. Discourse on this game is literal Armageddon. And my relationship with it is complicated. I have a soft spot for this game because it has spots where it is just peak. In the story with Cary frickin' Tagawa as Shang Tsung, Katana Khan, Fire God Liu Kang, these are all so narratively satisfying, yet the writing leading up to them is so genuinely poo-poo that it leaves a bad taste in your mouth. Same with the gameplay. The variations and especially the special moves in this game are at their best and most creative, but then you have Breakaway. Combat League, Towers of Time, The Crypt all suffer from the same issue. It really feels like whenever this game gets into a flow state, it's just like, no, screw that, we need to butcher Sindel for literally no reason. The one area that's allowed to shine without any real faults is the graphics, which are amazing. There are real arguments to be made that this game looks better than Mortal Kombat 1. I don't agree with them, but the fact that it's a conversation means a lot for a game that's 4 years older. So yeah, MK11 had all the potential in the world, just couldn't help but stumble nearly every chance it got. Number 9, Mortal Kombat Trilogy. I'll keep this brief. MK Trilogy isn't really its own game, it's built completely off of MK3, has the same story and gameplay, but the roster is loaded with every single character introduced at that point. And you know what? That's all it's trying to do, so I can't really fault it for that. But I also can't put it too high because it's not really a separate entry with its own identity. Number 8, Mortal Kombat 3. This game released at the height of MK's popularity, same year as the '95 film, but it didn't play it safe to keep the same audience, quite the opposite. No ninjas, no tournament, and a completely revamped gameplay system, an evolution that was sorely needed. MK3 brought in the run button and dial-a combos that picked up the pace to all-action, combo-heavy combat. It planted the seeds for the competitive scene we see now, and it's still a large part of that community today. The invasion storyline is great, albeit slightly harder to follow than the previous two titles, but the new additions to the roster more than make up for that. The Cyber Ninjas, Cabal, Sindel, and the others are among my favorite characters in the series. My issue with MK3 comes down to the polish. You could really tell they were straining the limits of what they could do with the resources that they had. This means a lot of cut down animations, awkward poses, and just corner cutting that means this game has a more cheap and rushed feel than MK 1992 and MK2, where every detail was squeaky clean. But that barely leaves a scratch on the overall product. MK3 was more than sufficient for capturing the immense hype of the series at that time. Number 7, Mortal Kombat Armageddon. I don't want to say that this game is underrated because at this point everyone says that, but man, did the MK community act like spoiled brats over this game for a hot minute. Mortal Kombat Armageddon, like Trilogy before it, brought every character in the series at that point together for the biggest roster the franchise has ever seen. But not only that, they included 2 new characters, a created character, and several additional modes. However, due to all this content with a K, like MK3, corners had to be cut. Every character only had 2 fighting stances instead of 3. They tried to make up for it with air combat, but no, just no. And no one had unique fatalities. Instead, there was a creative fatality system that, yeah, just stunk. But still, this game is a blast to revisit. It still has the same great, staple 3D era gameplay. You can play as literally anyone you want, like literally. You get a new, more combat-focused conquest mode, and you even get motor combat on top of that, which is not a play once and forget type of minigame. It's actually very addicting. Yeah, the story is kind of a mess and hard to follow, which is disappointing coming off of the best story in the franchise, but still, I don't think these sacrifices outweigh the huge reward you get as an MK fan playing this game. Number 6, Mortal Kombat 1992. The OG holding up strong, nearly breaking the top 5. Do I even gotta explain it? Ed Boon, John Tobias, and the rest of the Midway team caught lightning in a bottle with a gory, Enter the Dragon, Big Trouble in Little China inspired fighting game, riding the success of Street Fighter II. The story of the game is actually quite different than many of you may think, because it's been retconned to all hell since, for the better in my opinion, but it is a little nice just to look back at how simple it all was. No Outworld, no Shao Kahn, just a few guys and gal trying to take back the tournament from the corrupt sorcerer and his Shokan champion. And that initial roster obviously speaks for itself. All 7 playable characters have gone on to become absolute icons of gaming, plus the 2 villains, and you can't forget the first ever secret character, Reptile. Where MK92 is lacking is in the gameplay department. And listen, I'm not going to dog on a game that turns 35 next year, but simply put, I'm less likely to actually replay this title over the ones that don't feel so slow, unreactive, and just heavy. But despite that, you gotta give this game props. One of the most influential games of all time. Enough said. Number 5, Mortal Kombat Deadly Alliance. When people say Mortal Kombat 2011 saved the franchise, I always roll my eyes a bit. Deadly Alliance rescued this series from its dark ages in the late 90s and early 2000s, and I think it deserves a lot more credit for that. It also introduced so many elements of the series that people don't even remember came from this game. Conquest, Test Your Sight, the frickin' Crypt, and the new matured story and characters were great. Going from MK4 and the 2D era to this, there had to be an evolution to keep up with other games of the time. But they can't just lore dump and make characters unrecognizable, they eased us into this expansion of the world that the next game would just run with. The gameplay changes are also exactly what was needed from MK4. Full, no limits 3D movement, 3 different fighting stances including a weapon, and the new, fluid, smooth combo system that felt absolutely crispy. Now there are still some aspects of the game that feel a little prototypey, such as the lack of second fatality and the weird power-up feature, but overall this set up a fantastic, arguably best era for the franchise, and it's underappreciated in its impact. Number 4, Mortal Kombat 2. Geez, speaking of impact, it's simply impossible to be more influential on the series than the first entry, but MK2 comes really damn close to doing the impossible. Introducing Shao Kahn, Outworld, a host of iconic new stages in the fresh environment, and of course the new additions to the roster, including powerhouses like Kung Lao, Kitana, Mileena, Baraka, and more. And it doesn't end there. Characters introduced in the first game were even further expanded upon and made their definitive selves. Liu Kang in red, turning into a dragon, Sub-Zero as Kuai Lang, Raiden wearing blue. And even more secret characters, Smoke, Jade, and my goat, Noob Saibot. The gameplay is a big improvement, so much more responsive and quick than the first game, and the additional special moves per character made for a little more dynamic combat. What holds it back just a little is the AI opponents, which are just stupid, and unfortunately not literally. But hey, at least when you defeat them, this game introduced 2 fatalities per character, friendships, and babalities. It just keeps going with this game. So if MK92 placed the board, MK2 nailed it in with the definitive world, characters, look, and vibe for the series that has carried with it ever since. Number 3, Mortal Kombat Shaolin Monks. Listen, it may not be the traditional fighting game the series is known for, but it's created just as many fond memories for me and the entire MK community. And even then, it still carries so much of what makes the series special into the new genre. You still got cool specials, big combos, versus modes, secrets. It's easy to get your Mortal Kombat fix with this game. But beyond just that, this game provides a unique co-op experience you can't get anywhere else in the series, and honestly, for a spin-off game, a really well-crafted combat system that keeps it fun for hours on end. Now, the game does have its issues in the narrative department. Liu Kang and Kung Lao act really out of character sometimes, whether it's acting like a brat, being an idiot,
Are you okay?
or fatalitying a woman in cold blood in front of her best friend. But the game is non-canon anyway, and no one is really coming here for the story. It's for kicking it back with your bud and having a blast with the combat, fatalities, mortalities, boss fights. It doesn't fully represent everything the series is, so I can't put it above the 2 titles that I truly find the definitive MK experiences, but man, every MK fan needs to try this game out with a friend at least once. Number 2, Mortal Kombat 2011. When I think of the most Mortal Kombat game, it's MK9, all day, every day. If you want the most possible MK stuff in your MK game, it's this one. You want gore? It got you. You want a great roster? It got you. You want cool designs? It got you. You want amazing stages? It got you. Godlike music? Secrets? Absolutely. Just content with a K? Overflowing. Seriously, the amount that's in this game puts modern fighting games to shame. Tag team, test your might, sight, strike, luck, the challenge tower, the crypt, story mode, they just don't make them like this anymore. But let's actually talk about the story, because that is the one area where the game is lacking. I won't say it's horrible, but a lot of the poor NRS writing when it comes to character depictions and contrived storytelling that I hate originates from this game. However, to reduce this game down to its story is a crime because of just how Mortal Kombat it is. Even the gameplay, it's not anything special, but it's a return to form that just feels like MK. Yes, all the characters are broken, but if all of them are broken, none of them are. So, Mortal Kombat 2011 or Mortal Kombat 9 was an easy choice for the top 2. What was hard was deciding if it was 1 or 2, and for the casual audience, this is absolutely the game I'd recommend to you. But for the hardcores, I have to say the top spot is just a little more fulfilling. And that is number 1, Mortal Kombat Deception. Is this game the ultimate love letter to the franchise that MK9 is? No, not really. It's actually just another game, but sometimes it's not about capturing the definitive spirit of the franchise, it's about being really damn good. Mortal Kombat Deception is by far the most well-rounded Mortal Kombat title there is. The only bad thing about it is just a few meh characters on the roster, but it's more than made up for by the return of Mileena, Tanya, Nightwolf, Cabal, Sindel, Jade, Noob Saibot, and more. Plus you got Havoc in there. I mean, come on, it's Havoc. But the amount of world building this game did for the franchise is unmatched, introducing the Chaos Realm and Order Realm, establishing Bihan as Noob, bringing in Onaga as the new biggest threat yet. There's a lot going on in the story, but it all feels built up to in a satisfying way, so you're rewarded for following it closely, the way modern games just don't really do anymore, and something Armageddon kinda fumbled a little. The gameplay. It's almost the exact same as Deadly Alliance, but a lesson NRS should probably learn from: if it's not broke, don't fix it. And this game does exactly that, and is still just as fun for it. Then the extra modes, the full definitive conquest that's just a straight up whole action adventure game, puzzle combat, chess combat, which somehow don't feel as lazy and stupid as they should be, and the graphics show just how a dark MK game should be done. Colorful still, but gritty and fierce. MK2 did something similar, but honestly, Deception does it better. Deception really is just that game. Ask me tomorrow or the day after that, maybe MK9 could just barely edge it out. But today, the day that it matters, Deception is king. But I'm curious what your ranking of the Mortal Kombat games is. Let me know in the comments down below, and maybe, just maybe, I may debate you on some of your spicier takes. And if you ended up enjoying today's video, drop that like and subscribe for more. Also consider becoming a channel member, starting at just $2 a month for perks like special emojis and badges, early access to videos, and shoutouts at the end of every video. Speaking of which, shout out to Travis Truant, currently my one and only channel member. What an absolute Chad. But anyways, I'll see you all next time. Have a great day, my fellow oddities.